Dear friends, welcome to another episode of Today on U.S. Global Shield. In this video, we will talk about the Ukrainian strikes against gigantic Russian logistics centers in the rear. Why are they turning against these facilities now? Wars are not won with weapons alone. They are won with information. Whoever processes more data faster decides first and dictates the tempo of combat. In little over a week, Ukraine attacked half a dozen of Russia's largest distribution centers. These were warehouses belonging to Wildberries, the Russian e-commerce giant, the company Russians themselves call our Amazon. This marks a turning point in the war, with Kiev moving beyond striking only what exclusively supplies the Russian army to also targeting what sustains normal life in Russia. On July 18th, Ukrainian drones hit two Wildberries logistics complexes. The one in Elektrostal in the Moscow region, measuring over 360,000 square meters, with around 8,000 employees. And the one in Kotovsk in the Tambov region, opened last year and designed to store up to 54 million items. 4 days later, in the early hours of July 22nd, it was Krasnodar's turn, with around 100,000 square meters, and Novinomysk in Stavropol Krai, with about 90,000 square meters. On the 23rd, a warehouse in the Voronezh region suffered roof damage and suspended operations. And in the early hours of Friday, July 24th, new attacks struck facilities in St. Petersburg and Simferopol in occupied Crimea. The cumulative result is brutal, with open source analysis estimating that the attacks damaged roughly 10% of the company's logistics capacity. Rebuilding the facilities hit in the first attack alone is expected to cost up to 36 billion rubles, or roughly $500 million. A bill that insurers are unlikely to cover in full, with Ukrainian analysts estimating total losses close to $2.3 billion. What is interesting is that to attack such important Russian facilities, Ukraine didn't use anything exotic, relying instead on what it has been producing on a mass industrial scale: long-range fixed-wing piston-engine kamikaze drones. The two workhorses are the N-196 Lyuty, with a reported range of about 2,000 kilometers, and the FP family from the company Firepoint, with the FP-1 carrying a 100-kilogram warhead up to 1,000 kilometers away, and the FP-2 carrying a larger payload of up to 160 kilograms against targets up to 200 kilometers from the front line. The decisive difference lies in price and volume. The FP-1 costs around $55,000, while the much larger Lyuty runs close to $200,000. Firepoint stated in March that it produces about 200 of these drones every day, with the capacity to double or triple production, and that it has already cycled through 7 generations of navigation systems during the war, currently testing GPS-independent guidance via terrain image matching. If the means are so simple, why can't Russia stop these attacks against such critical infrastructure? The answer lies in the math. A Tor or Pantsir interceptor, or worse yet, an S-400 missile, costs far more than the drone it shoots down. When you launch 100 drones in a single night, the defender has to choose what to save. And Russian air defense was set up to protect Moscow air bases, command centers, and energy infrastructure, not e-commerce warehouses scattered from Krasnodar to St. Petersburg. Ukrainian experts explain that the first waves of drones served to reveal the positions of Russian batteries, allowing subsequent waves to exploit the gaps. Add to this the nature of the target. A distribution center is huge, stationary, has coordinates known to anyone with access to Google Maps, and is packed with cardboard, plastic, and fabric. It isn't the warhead that destroys the warehouse, it's the fire. Zelensky stated that the hit depots were used to supply sanctioned components destined for drone and missile production. Ukrainian analysts say Wildberries supplies the Russian military with dual-use goods and sanctioned electronics. Although there is no confirmed public evidence of cooperation between the company and the Russian Ministry of Defense, the platform openly sells ballistic vests, combat helmets, camouflage clothing, and fiber optic cables used in drones. A search for military supplies on the site returns nearly 80,000 items, including FPV goggles. The Russian government denies that Wildberries supplies the armed forces, but independent analysts and even internal Russian sources confirm that the Kremlin is taking advantage of that massive distribution network to offset gaps in its own logistics capability. It is, therefore, a sort of silent partnership between the military and Russia's largest retailer to support the invasion effort in Ukraine through a massive logistics distribution network that feeds military factories spread across the vastness of Russia, as well as the battlefield impact of all these attacks. Here, we must be blunt. There will be no immediate effect in the trenches. The effect is economic and long-term. Wildberries and its rival Ozone, combined with smaller competitors, account for the equivalent of 8.5% of Russia's GDP and indirectly employ 4 million people, more than 5% of the country's workforce, with these attacks fueling inflation and complicating decisions for the Russian central bank. Thousands of small sellers lost all their inventory, and the platform's contracts exempt the company from compensating them. In other words, beyond disrupting an intricate logistics distribution network indirectly used by the Kremlin, these Ukrainian attacks are causing a financial and economic disaster that will affect thousands of small and medium-sized Russian businesses that rely on Wildberries every day. Also interesting from a military standpoint is the structural reaction, with major Russian retailers looking into abandoning megacenters of 100,000 to 200,000 square meters and migrating to networks of regional hubs of 10,000 to 30,000 square meters, featuring warehouses partitioned into fire and blast-resistant modules. Scale aside, this is the same thing that happened to Soviet industry in 1941 and German industry in 1943. Disperse to survive. And that is precisely Kiev's objective: to impose an invisible war tax on the Russian economy, collected every single day. There is also the psychological dimension, openly acknowledged by Kiev, with these attacks seeking to destroy the illusion of a comfortable existence and the impression Putin attempts to convey to Russian society that the special military operation, as he calls the invasion, is something distant and incapable of affecting the lives of ordinary Russian citizens. But when Russians in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other major Russian cities open their windows and see huge columns of smoke rising into the sky, that illusion Putin tries to sell crumbles completely. In military terms, Russia must now protect not just refineries and bases, but thousands of commercial facilities spread across 11 time zones. On the flip side, Ukraine discovered it can turn small drones worth tens of thousands of dollars into hundreds of millions of dollars in losses, and that this trade-off is perfectly sustainable in the long run, as long as its production lines keep running. This doctrinal shift reflects a significant strategic maturation on the part of the Ukrainian command. Instead of concentrating efforts exclusively on high-value, strictly military targets, heavily protected by electronic warfare and missile batteries, Kiev identified that the most critical vulnerability of a continental state lies precisely in the fluidity and centralization of its supply chain. By striking the primary nodes of e-commerce and the distribution of dual-use items, Ukraine imposes an insoluble tactical dilemma on Moscow: pull crucial air defense systems from the front line to protect warehouses in the rear, thereby weakening the front, or accept the continuous degradation of its productive infrastructure. Concurrently, the impact on the private sector and the insurance market creates unprecedented financial friction. With billions in damages and insurance policies that deny claims resulting from armed conflicts, Russian business owners themselves are forced to absorb the direct cost of the war effort. In the long run, this approach of asymmetric attrition aims not merely to incinerate inventory, but to paralyze the pace of material replenishment for the Russian armed forces. Without an agile and integrated logistics network, the sustainability of large-scale offensives becomes severely compromised. Long-range drone warfare has thus consolidated itself as a cornerstone of Ukrainian doctrine for economic attrition and the strategic destabilization of Russia. Furthermore, the cost-effectiveness of these operations sends a clear signal to Western allies regarding the efficacy of Ukraine's domestic defense industry. By demonstrating autonomous mass manufacturing capability and constant innovation in navigation systems, Kyiv consolidates its tactical independence and shows that it can inflict profound damage on its adversary, while investing a tiny fraction of the resources typically required in large-scale warfare. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like below, and if you aren't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe right now, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates.